Productivity.
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 It feels like every year the emphasis on productivity grows and grows. In the past 5 years, the search term productivity on Google has seen some pretty massive spikes and dips with overall growth. However, the term rest has seen a pretty stable amount of search terms and a pretty low amount of growth over the same period of time. Fascinatingly enough, the term non-sleep deep rest has grown 4,000% in those 5 years, likely because of Dr. Amy Huberman. And frankly, that's a little stressful. You see, since 1866, America has used the 8-hour workweek as its gold standard of productivity. This is largely thanks to the Industrial Revolution and horrible working conditions for laborers. It wasn't uncommon to see these guys working 10, 12, 14, 16 hours a day because a factory has to run all the time, and they don't have robots back then. As you can imagine, this broke people pretty bad in a way that would make even St. Catherine's wheel jealous. However, this isn't actually when the 8-hour workday started, and the United States wasn't the place that saw it first. The astute of you will have recognized that there's actually a 100-year discrepancy between the 1866 date credited with the start of the American 8-hour workday and the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. The US behind the rest of the world in human rights conditions? Color me shocked. Like most things in our world, the adoption of the 8-hour workday was slow. It spread out over time and countries. The first American instance of this was in Philadelphia in 1791 during a carpenter's strike that would last nearly 50 years in various different forms and end in 1842 with an 8-hour workday being adopted for the carpenters. In 1864, a similar movement began in Chicago, resulting in an 8-hour workday for all federal employees in, you guessed it, 1866, the normally accredited start date of the 8-hour workday. However, not the whole story. 2 years later, in 1868, Congress passed a law that made all federal employees working an 8-hour workday. In 1914, the Ford Motor Company, the one generally accredited with the popularization of the 8-hour workday, you might have heard that somewhere, cut everyone's hours in the factory by a lot and brought them down to 8 hours a day and increased their wages. And Jeff Bezos could never. However, this is actually still not the beginning of everything. We can trace the 8-hour workday all the way back to 16th century Spain from Philip II. I don't know if he was a king or a prince. It didn't say that. Philip II set an 8-hour workday in Spain for construction workers with an edict called the Ordenanzas de Felipe II. Felipe II? Ordenanzas de Felipe II. That. Similarly, in 19th century Wales, Robert Owen introduced the 8-hour workday as a way of splitting life into 3 parts: 8 hours of work, 8 hours of recreation, and 8 hours of rest. Finally, 100 years later, during the Bolshevik uprising, the 8-hour workday was brought into Russia as the standard of living. This was so incredibly popular that it actually inspired a bunch of other socialist and communist countries to adopt the same standard, which was also so incredibly popular that it created an uprising and general strikes in people that had world leaders concerned that there would be a legitimate uprising of the proletariat, threatening global capitalism and destabilizing the world economy. This is a real story. This is the real history. It's crazy what happened. So we got the adoption globally of the 8-hour workday in 1919 in a formal section of the Treaty of Versailles. You know, the one from like the war that was like, don't do that anymore. There's a whole section in there about labor conditions and the 8-hour workday being a globally recognized thing. And this led to the formation of what we now know as the International Labor Organization.
Hi, Editing Austin here. I just want to make it really clear that I'm not like picking on any of the YouTubers or videos that I put in that intro. It was just to make a point, a lighthearted little joke. I watch some of these guys, so it's not. I'm not being mean. Okay.
Okay, great. So we've had that little history lesson, and it makes it really seem like the 8-hour workday is like a great thing, and it was, honestly. It went from killing yourself for 16 hours a day to killing yourself for 8 hours a day, and like for most people, that's a big deal. Unfortunately, that's kind of like saying that free market capitalism is better than feudalism, which is like true, but things tend to wear out their welcome. Imagine a guy coming up to you and bonking you over the head with a baseball bat, and you being like, ow, what the hell, that hurt really bad, man. And he was like, yeah, but it's better than being picked to death all day by a bunch of woodpeckers, isn't it? Yeah, but like, I'd rather not have to deal with either. Even with today's standard of living and the invention of things like TVs and microwaves, the 19th century standard of like work life really hasn't changed all that much. Speaking of things that are unchanged from the past, have you guys been like apartment hunting recently? What is with all of these units that look like they haven't been touched since the 1970s? Why are we still doing cabinets like this? Now in 2025, we have things like generative AI and smartphones in our pockets that could launch rockets, and the cloud, making the amount of actual human labor that human being people need to do like dramatically lower. Have you noticed that like the main selling point or all of the marketing jargon around like these technologies like generative AI is saying like, this is gonna let us spend more time doing what we wanna do and less time doing what we don't. And then it's just like these really cursed generated images of Jesus building a sandcastle, or like the most deformed child you've ever seen in your life holding up a sign saying no one sang me happy birthday this year. And then like a bunch of boomers are like, oh, it's so beautiful, or oh, it's so sad. I don't know about you, but I want my AI to do my dishes and my laundry. I can make a gross picture of a distorted baby myself. Ew. Well, as it turns out, in 2016,
Voucher Cloud
conducted a study that showed that the average office employee spends, guess how many hours a day on productive work? Oh wait. 2 hours and 53 minutes. The rest of that time is effectively kind of just fucking around. And there's data to show it. If that's not troubling enough, it has been shown that the average work week has gone up from 40 hours a week to 47 hours a week in American office places. This was a study conducted by
Gallup in 2014.
So who knows how bad it is now. It's been 10 years. That's awful. And in a poll by Gallup in 2014, it showed that 40% of American workers are working 50 hours or more. Not only that, but it's also shown that people that work 55 to 70 hours see a sharp decline in productivity to the point that you are, quote, literally getting absolutely nothing done. In fact, it's been shown that working 55 hours a week or more increases your likelihood of a stroke or death by heart disease by 35%, according to the World Health Organization. Probably doesn't help that people are achieving all of these extra hours at the cost of sleep. Lack of sleep is not only a productivity killer, but it is also a literal person killer. So it begs the question, for what? If the research shows that we get a maximum of 4 hours of productive work a day, sometimes up to 6, but the general consensus is about 4 hours of productive work per day at the maximum, 3 hours or less at the average, why are we doing this? What's our obsession with hustle and grind? Why do we put all of this pressure on ourselves to work these crazy hours to get shit done when at best it's severely diminishing returns on what we're actually putting into it, and at worst it's literally killing us? I understand that when you're a full-time employee, you're working a 9 to 5, or you're working any like job for an employer, you're kind of at the mercy of the big man at the top. But that's not entirely what I'm talking about here. That is something that requires slow, consistent change over time in the same way that the 8-hour work week did. What I'm talking about is all of the other stuff, and the freelancers, and the business owners, and the creatives that grind until their bodies look like the guy at the end of the 1982 classic horror film, The Thing. So many people work an 8-hour workday and then come home and then stress out to work on their side hustle or the other thing that's going to get them out of the day job and the rat race. And this is not a video to disparage those people. I did the same thing, and I'm still doing the same thing. What I'm talking about is the insane amount of pressure that we put on ourselves to do those things, lest we be overrun by guilt for not being productive enough. This comes at a really high cost to our mental health and our physical health. Let me paint you a picture about myself really quick. I've always been a really ambitious guy. I have long-term dreams of owning a cool house in California and driving a couple of cool cars and having a job that makes a really profound impact on the world around me and enables me to have those nice things, and of being married and of having nice things in that house, and of being able to go do stuff when I want to, and like retire my parents. I also have short-term dreams of living in a nice-ish apartment in LA and driving like a mid-range car, doing a job that I'm not beholden to an employer for. The problem is, both of these dreams are far beyond the level of income that I'm at. See, in my mind, I think that I have to be able to put in like an inhuman amount of hours into whatever the thing is that's going to get me there. Like I have to be able to give 14 hours a day if I want to be able to have any of this stuff.
What I've done now is I have changed and manipulated time. I now get 21 days a week. Stack that up over a month.
Growing up with an entrepreneurial interest, I digested and filled myself with a lot of not the healthiest hustle culture content, and I took it all very to heart, and now I'm paying for it. When I was 18, I was suckered into an MLM. And I found myself around a lot of dudes that you might find at like a fintech convention. It was like sucking down grind set puree through a straw. I was convinced that I had to sacrifice every single worldly pleasure and all of my free time for maximum results. I was told that I need to lock in and I need to not let any distractions in. It's a culture that prides themselves on the number of hours worked rather than actually analyzing what those hours are doing for them. It's like mental masturbation for white dudes that don't know how to talk to women. Not that I would know anything about that. I got out of that MLM pretty quickly when I never made any of my $500 investment back, or never made any of my mom's $500 investment back. Sorry, Mom. And I realized it wasn't for me. But I was left with this impression that I'm not cut out for what I want and that I have to hustle harder if I want any of that freedom. To this day, I still get really down on myself for not being able to work 10 to 14 hours a day. And it's like a real problem. You see, I've always had this like aversion to work I don't like. I think a lot of this comes from my ADHD making anything I don't like literally unbearable. It's actually caused quite a bit of tension in relationships in my life. I could never keep a job as a teenager. I was always quitting them and actively avoiding trying to get one. I did terribly in school, and even as a little kid when I played Little League Baseball, I threw a tantrum every time I had practice because I sucked shit at it and I hated it with every tiny fiber in my little body. Doing anything that I don't like doing feels like there's someone inside of my skull trying to push their way out, or like they're blowing up a balloon inside my head. My body feels like my blood is made of sand and I collapse under every little bit of overstimulation. I also didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until I was 28, 2 years ago, and I feel like had I learned that a little bit earlier in my life and actually taken it seriously, I may have learned how to work with it and not developed the voice in my head that's mean to me all the time. But that's not to say I don't like working at all. I worked on this script for 5 hours and I didn't even notice the time go by because I was enjoying myself so much. Turns out, if I'm doing something that I actually really like, I can work for quite a long time. When I was 11 years old, I discovered graphic design with GIMP and Photoshop and Illustrator and stuff, and I spent quite literally every moment of my free time from the ages of 11 to fucking, I don't know, 18, doing that all the time. It's my career now. The 5 years that I lived in LA, I was painting all the time, every day after work and on weekends, and I was enjoying myself until I wasn't. I play in a band and I oftentimes stay at practice far later than I should because I'm just having such a good time. So the work ethic isn't the issue. What I have learned is that my energy is incredibly valuable to me, and I have to be spending my time doing something that I like if I want to have said work ethic that allows me the opportunity to put in the hours that are required for success. Still though, that hasn't stopped the guilt and pressure of all of the hustle bros telling me you need to work harder from crushing me like the weight of a Cat D9C19 bulldozer. Every day, like many of you I'm sure, there's a little voice in my head screaming, "You need to work harder," at me, and I have sensitive little ears. Despite knowing everything I do about the average person's actual productive hours, the standard of work being over literally 100 years old, the science of sleep and stress, I still get down on myself for not being able to work an 8-hour day every day. It's kind of ridiculous, really. I get everything done on time and sometimes early, and I'm really efficient at what I do. There's not really much of a reason for me to be so about my hours, you know? I can even do a 40-hour day if it's paid because the little electric meatball in my brain gives me all the feel-good juice because it means that I can get a nice little trinket at the end of it. The problem is on a normal day, I don't have that much work to keep me busy. The problem isn't that I'm missing deadlines. The problem is that I don't want to do personal work for personal work's sake. Remember, I was in a circle of influence that was telling me that if you don't use every single waking hour of your day wisely, you're not going to get what you want. But what is that going to do for me? Yeah, I can fluff my portfolio until the end of time, but that's not going to make me more money or get me more work. There's a place for that, but what am I going to do for 25 hours a week? There's no reason for it. I could play the graphic designer influencer game and make 100 reels a week, but I'd rather put a toothpick in my fucking big toenail and kick a door as hard as I can. I could send twice as many emails a week. I could learn a new skill. I could sell digital products. I could make a course. I could use LinkedIn like it's Twitter. Or I could not. I don't want to be productive. Not like that. I don't want to fill my day with tasks just to say that I did it even though it doesn't move the needle for me.
Hey man, what's going on? How's your day been? I just spent 14 hours a day digging a really big hole and then filling it back up again over and over again until my hands bled. Why? Because I'm better than you. Okay. Can you take me to the hospital?
Especially when it would just take years off my life instead. Of course, I'd like to be productive in meaningful ways. I'd love to have a thing that I love so much I want to do it all the time, but that's sustainable productivity. If you look at some of the most successful people out there making an impact doing what they're doing, they're as successful as they are because they really, really love doing the thing that they do, and that's what they want to spend their time doing. I do think that there's some mythos around the whole do what you love for a living and never spend a day in your life working thing, but that's for another day. Similarly, you hear all of these stories of all of these hyper successful people getting to the top and making their millions of dollars, and then they end up just completely miserable and burnt out and fried and unhappy, and it's because they're not doing something that gives them life. They're just chasing the dollar for the dollar's sake. I want to be rich too, but not at the price of becoming a husk.
What I've done now is I have changed and manipulated time.
You know what I do want to do though? Lay down. I want to play video games for 8 hours at a time and not feel guilty about it. I want to go out with my friends and make cool art. I want to watch my favorite bands play live. I want to live my life. I want to sleep. I want to rest. Stop it! After nearly 20 years of relentlessly chasing my goals, I am fucking tired, man. I've had enough of this voice in the back of my head telling me to work harder, be more efficient, produce more, be the best, work longer, suck it up, and I'm sure you have too. This may be a crazy concept, but it turns out that rest is actually really, really productive. When we live in an age where everything is so automated as it is now, the 8-hour workday really only exists to exploit us and squeeze every last drop of profit out of our tiny, spongy little bodies. And it doesn't even work. Remember that study from earlier about how many productive hours we actually work in a day? Well, another study done by Icelandic research consortium, the Autonomy Institute, showed that reducing work hours from 37.5 hours to 30 hours and days of work from 5 days to 4 days actually showed an increase in productivity. There was also a study done by Microsoft in Japan that showed a 40% increase in productivity by cutting the workers' hours to 30 hours a week and 4 days. And a 2018 global poll by the Workforce Institute showed that 45% of workers thought that they could get all of their day's work done in less than 5 hours. And 78% of employees thought they could get all of their work done in 7 hours. That 78% includes the 45% of people that thought that they could get it done in under 5 hours, which means only 33% of people thought that they could get all of their work done between hours 5 and hours 7. Do you know what you could do with all of that extra time? You could binge Baldur's Gate 3 for 8 hours instead of 6 hours. Someone please help me, I'm losing control of my life. I bought this game a month ago. Rest, and I mean real restorative deep rest, has incredible benefits beyond the productivity of it all. It can literally help you feel better and live longer. And I want to live forever. A 2024 study by Alexandra D Crosswell et al. Looked into the effects of mindfulness practices like yoga, meditation, and prayer. Overwhelmingly, the study finds that these mindfulness practices, quote, enhance positive psychological and physiological functioning by optimizing cellular energy consumption. And a lot of other details that you can read in the study here, because this video is long enough already. Another study by Patricia Albulescu, I'm very sorry, et al. Looked at micro breaks, or 5 to 10 minute breaks between work and life tasks, to see what they would do for us. Unsurprisingly, it found that while they do help with general well-being, you really need longer breaks to get actual long-term benefits. Cutting edge science here. Give me a lab coat and I'm gonna prove that lifting heavy weights is real hard. I'm kidding, Patricia, please don't get mad at me. It seems a little obvious, but having the documented data does genuinely actually help us. But it's no mystery. Anyone can tell you that a good night's sleep makes you feel way better and that a vacation can breathe new life into you. But why don't we take it more seriously? Serious deep rest can ease burnout, reduce stress, give you more energy in the long run, fight inflammation, and have a hugely positive effect on your mental health. Sounds like I need 100 vacations, huh? Seriously though, it shouldn't take all of these studies to tell you that taking time away from producing stuff is good for you. We've all felt it. If you have a job that you don't love, you've probably been filled to the brim with thoughts of things that you'd rather be doing literally anything else than the job that you're doing. I've been there. We're not built for this constant work, and we shouldn't let a bunch of rich guys convince us that we have to torture ourselves just so we can achieve our dreams. Hell, we shouldn't even feel bad for spending time watching TV or playing video games all night instead of doing a more enriching hobby. I've had plenty of times where I kicked myself for watching YouTube for too long or playing video games all night instead of playing guitar or drawing or something. But what does it do for me? We're just guilting ourselves for spending our time doing something that Dave Ramsey calls less valuable than some other equally as self-serving hobby. Latte breath. What does it matter if I'm playing a video game or drawing a picture? They're both, for me, one's just more fun. There's no rules to rest. There's no moral way to rest. If you feel like one thing helps you feel more restored the next day than another thing, by all means, do that thing. Caveat. Don't spend your day doom scrolling Instagram. You're just gonna get flooded with ads and shit that makes you angry. And there's a lot of evidence that shows that constant social media use is really, really bad for depression and stress, and actually spikes up your cortisol levels and makes it so that you're equally as alert and on as if you were doing something like work or something more productive. So not the best. I know you probably already know that, but I had to put it in there because I don't want to get a message across that I'm like, yeah, just sit on your couch and scroll Instagram all day and watch stupid TikToks. It'll make you feel great, because it's not what I'm saying. But do something truly restful. Rest is different for everyone. For me, it's sinking into my big stupid couch and playing video games all night. For you, it might be going to a museum or having a 3-day movie marathon in bed with your cat. There's no hard, fast rules for this. If it makes you feel better and you feel more refreshed after it, it is totally valid and it's totally okay. By now, I've shown you that you really don't need to do as much work as you think you do. Even an hour a day on a side project can be the difference between success and failure. If you work a 9 to 5 and you get home and all you want to do is lay on your couch for the night, do it. As long as you're not sacrificing another aspect of your life, like your health, or becoming detrimentally unhealthy, I think you should just take the damn nap. That post-work nap can be the entire difference between spending your whole Saturday working diligently towards your dream and building that business that you really want to build without even noticing the time go by, and spending your entire Saturday crushed by the weight of your own guilt. And I didn't even get into America's fixation with escapism and substance abuse as a way of de-stressing from the week. Oh, look at the time, it's wine o'clock. You're gonna have a really hard time chasing that dream or doing that artwork or making that music if you spend your entire Friday and Saturday blackout drunk and your entire Sunday puking into the tub because you want to forget that Janet was such a bitch in the KPI review. Fuck Janet. All my friends hate Janet. So listen to your body. Sleep that extra hour. Watch that movie. Go to that yoga class you've been putting off. Take the family to the park for a simple picnic. Snuggle the dog and nap with the kids. Like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. The work can wait.